Welcome to Just an Average Citizen, the podcast that helps to educate, inform, and empower you to make an impact in Abilene and the big country. I'm so excited to be here with you for another episode. I think some weeks are slower than others. Last week was definitely not slow. I probably pulled an 80-hour week last week just with all the meetings and things that I did. I was exhausted researching, and it was just a perfect storm. It wasn't like that. Normally, I really don't spend that much time on a weekly basis, but just trying to learn some new things really stretched me. So I hope that I can help share all that research that I did, all that time I spent trying to learn things. I hope that you will be able to share this with your family and friends after you subscribe so that we can make sure we get the word out, because part of the problem is we need others to know what's going on. And right now, most people don't know they need to know. And until you share this and say, hey, this is something we need to start learning about, it really is not going to be on most people's radar. In fact, most people don't have time for it. And there's a reason, because we filled our life with so many other things that we don't understand what we don't understand. And so it's purposely designed that way. It's purposely designed for us to stay in our own lane and not really know what's going on, because really what's great is when we are not involved as a community regularly and engaged, we can't hold our government accountable, and they kind of have a free reign. And so then we go, oh no, something's wrong. And we come in and we're like, yeah, you don't know how the game's played, so you really can't change much. And then we go, oh man, there's nothing for us to do. And so we go back to our worlds, and the cycle kind of repeats all the time. And so if you're one that thinks, man, I don't have time, then this podcast is for you. What I'm doing is for you, because you're right. You don't have time. It's something you've got to make time for. And we're going to learn how to do that together, because it wasn't something I made time for until I realized, oh my gosh, this is where we're missing a lot of what needs to be happening in our community, because it makes a big impact. So I've got several big items to talk about tonight. They're not necessarily lots. I'm really going to focus on budgets and tax rates this week. I have had a crash course in tax rates more than I've ever thought I would. I thought I was doing really good. I thought I was learning how to do it. Of course, there's no one offering me help. There's no one at the city saying, hey, it looks like you're interested in what's going on. Let me show you the ropes, or let me tell you a good place to get started, or here's some helpful information. Nope, none of that. It's basically, oh, you're interested? All right, good luck. We'll see how well you do, because we're going to make sure we point out how well you're not doing and where you make a mistake. And so that's really intimidating. Like, who wants to stand up and make a fool of themselves? I do it a lot, but it's not on purpose. I find myself doing that in ways that I, don't intentionally choose to. And it's not on purpose, but I would rather make myself look like a fool trying to do the right thing than sit around being afraid of failing. And I'm failing up. I am learning, I'm growing, I'm understanding things, and I'm learning how to make it easier for you to get started. Because if you had to go through what I had to go through, no one would do what I've done. And it's designed that way. If I can't stress that enough, it's designed that way to keep you unengaged and uninvolved, because it's way easier. And I'm going to tell you a couple of things that I've learned along the way that I think is going to shift how I approach doing this, how I approach trying to engage with local officials, staff, if I can engage with them. And even I'm into the education realm too. I'm into public schools, because I've heard that public schools are underfunded. They're just not giving it enough money. And so that makes me go, what can we do to fix this? How can we solve this problem? And so I've gotten into that world too. And Just an Average Citizen has stayed mostly on municipality, but I do want to touch a little bit on the tax rate or the proposed tax rate for the school district, especially Abilene, because it affects you. It's a part of the pie that no one acts like there's a pie. Everyone just says, oh, here's, let me come up with a good example as I go through this rather than try and screw one up now. But let's go through the city stuff first quickly, and then I'll go through it, because I'm going to try and keep this under 20 minutes so that you can stay engaged long enough to pay attention. Okay, so if we go to the city website, there's some other things I learned today. I was actually able to go to the public health meeting for the county, the Abilene Taylor County District Public Health meeting. Anyway, board meeting. It was really interesting in ways that they probably weren't meaning to be interesting, but that's a conversation for another day. So I'm going to stick on to the budgets, but because I saw that they're spraying for the West Nile virus, and it's curious as how effective it is. And of course, I read about the moth. And if you don't know about the moth and all the things with polio, then you probably don't appreciate all the things that I am thinking right now about them spraying chemicals into our air. Yay. Okay, so let me tell you about what's going on with this budget. So really, I want you to look at this word up here. I'm wrapping my mouse around it. I don't know if you can see it, the mouse cursor. This is a summary. This whole book is a summary. It's not going to tell us really anything except to say, hey, here's about where we spend here. It's all one big bucket. They talk about they only have designated funds for designated things. It's very limited when it's that way. It's the general fund, and they can spend it however they want to. And so this is the current proposed budget. They have highlighted, I believe, some things to reflect some changes that they made because they started off wanting to ask for a higher tax rate. And thankfully, they did minimize it just a little bit, not a lot. Not enough, in my opinion, but we can't get them to lower it because right now the summary is satisfactory. And when they come to you as a citizen and they say, we're going to present this public hearing and we want you as citizens to approve this summary. So here's the general idea of what we're going to be doing, but we're not going to tell you the specifics because if we told you the specifics, then you might really see that we're overspending in some areas and underspending in other areas. And the way we present it, you can't really hold us accountable to that. And so that's why we have to be accountable. That's why we have to pay attention. Not because they're doing the wrong thing per se on the surface, but because they're making it hard for us to see if or when they do it. And that's troubling to me. But the good news is we start now. You're like, wait, Tammy, they haven't even passed the proposed rate. Or I'm sorry, actually they've passed the proposed rate. We haven't even had November elections. That's right. Because if you wait until it's time for next summer to do this, you're going to miss the boat again, and we won't have any time to affect change. So we start now. We start telling our neighbors, hey, have you heard about the proposed tax, or have you heard about the adopted tax rate? Do you know about the no new revenue rate? Do you know how much money our city's getting in revenues? Do you understand how our city gets revenues? That 75% of it is property taxes, and the rest is other types of revenues. Let's see, like on this thing, it says intergovernmental revenue, which again, I'm not really sure if that's really intergovernmental because they don't really explain it. Transfers in. Where does this $32 million come from? That's a really curious information that I would like to know. But see, it's a summary, so they don't have to tell me. And they only present a summary. And then we waste our time talking about the minor improvement fund. Guilty as charged. I did that for the last 2 years. Now I know that the minor improvement fund is the distraction. What's really going on is we don't know. And so what I did at last Thursday's council meeting was I said, hey, listen, it would be helpful if you said, hey, listen, these are some things that we cut back on because we don't need them. Here are some things we're adding to. But they don't do that. They just say, here's some things we want to spend more money on. Here's some general things we want to spend money on. Police officers, things that you cannot say no to. And so you're like, well, I want more police officers in the city, so you're going to approve the increased budget. But you know what's crazy is the increased budget that they've been presenting is based on revenues that they've kind of kept hidden because they don't really make a big deal about it. Now, they technically have to talk about it, and I believe they have, and I've just been asleep at the wheel and didn't know, or I didn't know this term, so I didn't understand what it was, and no one was really interested in explaining it to me, the no new revenue rate, but now I know. And so what I understand is every year when they raise that rate and they don't talk about the no new revenue rate, they're kind of going, hey, we're getting extra revenue here and we're not going to tell anybody about it. And they're going to think we're not raising the rates that much. But it matters. And the honesty and integrity and the transparency is what we've got to ask of our elected officials so that when the city presents information, we know that our elected officials are holding them accountable because our job is not to hold the city staff accountable. Our job is to hold the elected officials accountable. So if you've ever been frustrated with city staff, that's okay. You got to take care of it through the city council because they're the ones that answer to us. The city staff answer the city manager, and the city manager answers to the council. So you got to know the chain of command in order to get things done. But I just wanted to let you know, it's a summary. It is not a specific detailed thing. There's no way in fact, it was so cute. There was a gentleman who knows all things, apparently. And he asked me what line item would I cut from the budget? And I was like, I don't think you've looked at this budget, because if you looked at this budget, let's just go down a page here and so you can see. If you look at this budget, even for the funds, okay, so yeah, here we go. General fund. he said, which would you remove? And I said, well, I don't think you've looked at the budget. He's like, I've looked at every kind of budget. I've done and bragged about all the things he knew. And I'm like, but apparently he hasn't looked at the Abilene City Council, a city budget, because should I remove the permit? So this is revenues. I probably shouldn't do this page. Sorry, I picked a bad page. Here we go. Human resources. Should I get rid of civil service, workforce services, benefits, payroll? Which one of those line items should I get rid of? Oh, wait, I shouldn't, because those are categories. They don't put line items. So it's good to know that there's no line items. We cannot see that. They're not showing it to us. I don't think anyone would pay attention even if they did. But the problem is it's too much information. There is some degree of their needing to do the work they need to do. We've just got to find a way to get our council to do a better job of helping them display so that we can feel confident that our tax revenues that they collect from us every year is being spent wisely. And to use the ever horrific threat that, well, if you want to lower the tax rate, we have to cut services. Yeah, that's true. But you know what? If I don't want to spend as much money on groceries, I have to stop buying as much food. Does that mean it's a bad thing? No, it doesn't. So let's stop fear-mongering people and acting like they won't be able to turn on the street lights and pay the firemen and save our city if we want them to lower the tax rate. There are ways to cut budget, but the system we have in place does not really support or encourage that. All right, let me get off that soapbox. So let's come look here. This is the actual slides from the presentation that was made during the city council meeting. And I want you to see this so you can begin to understand. In 2021 or 22, I got off on this. I thought it was approved in the 86 legislation, which I thought was in 2019, but I could be wrong. I think that's about right. They decided to remove the term effective tax rate and put the no new revenue rate. Now, I've spoken with the people who deal with this, and they say it's super complicated and we can't really explain it to you, and this oversimplifies it and causes problems. The problem is they offer no alternatives. So until the beautiful financial section or department of our city staff comes up with a better option, let's just use what the state law requires them to display. And they do display it, just very not always in the forefront. And that's okay. I mean, that's not okay, but that's what it is. All right. So if you paid taxes last year, our tax rate was 7607. And so what they do is they wipe the slate clean and they take the 7607 that we paid last year. And it's more information than you need to know right now on what that represents. It represents the maintenance and operations, which is what they do the day to day and how they run the business or how they run the city. And then there's the INS, which is the debt service. And that's just what we pay for the minimum debt service payment each year. So that can change a little bit. But really it's the 7607, which we paid last year. So they combine that with this no new revenue rate, which is basically like the new amount of property tax appraisals that they've established for this year, because they raise the appraisal rates every year and it generates more revenue. So if you just looked at 7607 and then looked at what they proposed this year, which is 7506, I believe, then it would be like, oh, look, they're going down. But actually, you need to compare it to the no new revenue rate. So the 7607 really is a 7375. So in order for us to have a flat tax, we need 7375. So we don't have that. We have 7506. And I'll show you that right here. See, there's the 7506. So we're about a little less than 3 cents. Or no, is that 3 cents? Yeah, 3 cents per $100 evaluation. Is that right? And again, I may use the wrong words, but I'm understanding what I'm saying. So I just want you to see that we got to compare that from year to year. And that's across the board. In fact, so I have this great website that I was given by, I looked into this more because I wasn't getting help from the city or many people. And so I looked in, I reached out to the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and they were so helpful. And I just am so grateful for entities that recognize when citizens are trying to take back their power and understand how to hold the government accountable. Because we have been hearing that the state has been trying to give us back our property taxes. The problem is when the taxes come back to us in property tax relief or homestead exemptions and things like that, we are not seeing it because the local entities are what take pieces of that from us. And so what's important to know is what you pay for your own property. So whether you rent or you own the property, you can come to this texas.gov / Texas.gov, and then you come to this Texas property tax directory, and then you can search by Taylor County, and then what it's going to show you is, so if you come to Texas.gov, Texas / living in Texas, and I will try and post the link on the comment if you're on social media or in the description of the video. There's a link so you can click here and find your own evaluation of your property tax on your own property. And if you're not taking advantage of getting your property tax reduced, you should be applying for that every May. When you get your information, you should apply and say, I want the appraisal to be reduced. That's not the right way to say it because I wasn't expecting to say that, but you should be able to take advantage of that. And that's another way that you can do that. So once you find your property name, you're going to look up by owner or address, and owner and address or whatever. And so you'll come up with something like this. Now I've hidden the person's name so you don't know who this is or what property is, but what you'll see is there's Abilene ISD, City of Abilene, Taylor County, and they tell you what your last year's property taxes was, the rates. So Abilene ISD was 0.99, City of Abilene was 0.7607, Taylor County was 0.5486. Then they'll tell you the no new revenue. So that is the hardest word to say, the no new revenue rate. And so it'll tell you what it is for this year. So in order for us to pay less taxes, we have to be at 73. So when they propose the taxes, it's at 75. So it's going up. So you can look at this. It's a little confusing, but I want you to be able to see that these are the pieces of the pie. This is the pie that's being considered when you have to pay taxes. This is where it's coming from. We don't have income tax for the state, or we don't have an income tax for the state. We just pay local, which is a great benefit of living in Texas. But there are people taking pieces of the pie. When you have 55 cents, you have 76 cents, you have 99 cents. These are all coming out per 100. So what's that? $1.30. That's like $2, over $2 per $100,000, which is it doesn't sound bad in isolation. And what's great about these entities is we're paying into things to provide services for us. And we have to know what services we're paying to know if they're beneficial to us. And we get to decide as voters through elections and through voter-approved tax rates. So I can't spend much more time on this because I'm going into the weeds here and I'm probably lost some of you. But I want you to know you can see what you actually pay in property taxes, because most of us just pay it through a mortgage. You don't even notice really what you're paying unless it's more. You have to pay more or less because of different things. But so at this time, they haven't adopted these haven't been adopted because this was taken a week ago or something like that. So you can see this. So now let's move into, so we have the city saying we need more money. We don't show you what we're doing with the money we have now, but we need more of it. And when Blaze Reagan, the lone councilman, said, hey, let's lower the tax rate, everybody was like, Well, there was a few that wanted to lower the tax rate, but they kind of gave everybody a hard time. So it was like pulling teeth to get the tax. And the mayor was like, tax rate down. The mayor was like, oh, but we need more money. And he would go with probably the voter approved rate that he could go with, which is this year was 79. So you can see 73 to 79. It's huge. Now, he didn't say that, but I don't think there's a tax rate hike he doesn't like, from what I can tell. All right, so let's go to Abilene ISD, and I'm going to try and explain this quickly so that you can understand what you need to do. Now, I'm not going to tell you necessarily what I think about what you need to do. I want you to understand so you can be informed, because the problem is most entities tell you what they want you to do so that you do what they want, and you don't understand, am I making the choice because I want to, or is it because I'm being coerced into doing it? So if you went to the Abilene website and you look at their VATR, which is called a voter approved tax rate election, voter to 25. Isn't that pretty? The logo looks so awesome. And they write a letter and they say, listen, we want you to vote for a VATR. And it's called Proposition A on the ballot. And it will determine whether or not they can get more than $10 million of new funding each year to support staff in schools. That amount includes 3.7 in local funding, which voters will be asked to approve on the ballot. So what they're not saying, and what frustrates me about this process, is they're not saying that amount includes a 3.7 million in local funding, which is coming from an increase in what you are. It's coming from an increase. They're increasing your taxes. Now, the problem with that is you're getting a decrease because of a lot of complicated things that I can't go into now, but you're getting, last year's rate was 99. So with the no new revenue rate, it's 1. Let me show you this slide here. But they didn't tell you that, let's see, it may have been down here lower, but how many people actually read that far, right? So So with the property tax bill in Abilene would realize a 207 decrease. So they're saying it's decreasing, but you're just paying a little bit of money. It's just $30, right? I forgot to mention, which I always do, I don't know why, when we're looking at this thing right here and it's saying, hey, look, your taxes aren't, that's not that big of a deal. They never talk about the street maintenance fee that you're paying on top of the taxes. They're never talking about the different fees that they can add in. Mainly it's a street maintenance fee, but I think that should be included when they're considering what taxes Abilene citizens pay. And I think we're paying a lot compared to a lot of other cities. Now, I haven't figured out what that is, why we're paying 30 cents more per $100 than most other areas that I've looked into. I don't understand that, but it's something to know. They didn't really go into saying they're asking for additional pennies. And like I said, what they're asking for is not bad. I don't understand why they're selling it like a used car salesman. It doesn't make sense to me. So taxpayers have to pay $3.7 million out of their pocket willingly. You have to vote on it to prove it, because if not, they're not getting it. It's going back to 8.9. So instead of being 9.9, it's going to 8.9. And there's some disadvantages to that. And I can explain there. It's not like you have to do this or you're a bad person kind of thing. It's what do you think is best for you and your family, and what do you want to invest in the schools? And that's what should be presented. So we come here, and this is a graph picture. So it shows you this is last year's 0.99. This is what they can get without having a voter approved tax election, which is 8.89. And then this is what they're asking for, 9.50. So what you can see here is they don't tell you in this little public, beautiful presentation, they didn't tell you that it's going to cost the taxpayers $3.7 million. They just tell you what you're not, like you're getting back money, but you only have to give back a little bit. And again, I think that comes across as forcing you to make a decision, because then it sounds like you're a greedy monger if you don't want to give $30 to the schools. But that's not what it is. The state representatives have fought hard to get us, somewhat hard, I don't know if hard is the right word, but they've been reducing our property taxes, so that we can have some relief. And then the schools and the city and the county, they're all coming and saying, give me my part, give me my part. I can't do my life without my part. And you're like, but how do I do my life, right? Like, how is it that we are in this situation? It's because we just don't understand the process. So that's where we're starting. We're going to start 2025, 2026 off with a bang, because we're going to be ready for these conversations, so that when the proposed tax rate comes around, the city council, the school boards, everybody's going to have a full-on understanding of what the citizens want, so that they can better serve their community, because we all have to pinch our pennies and restrict our budgets when money gets tight. So for them to say that they need more money, show us the reason. We don't have to show you the money, but show us the reason, right? There's a lot of complicated reasons why the school district has been in a deficit for 2 years. There's a lot of complicated reasons, and it's cost teachers jobs. There's a lot of things that have happened, and it affected a lot of people negatively. And so we've got to get in a better place. But why are we doing this, and what do we have to show for this? And I was expecting, when they presented this in the first week, to say, this is what you're investing in. It's pretty vague, and it's a long letter, and I'm not seeing it, and I've been paying attention. So how is it going to come across to you who has not had the privy to sit through multiple board meetings and read multiple presentation or agenda packets and all the things? So let me just give you a little starter to what you need to be paying attention to. How much does it increase your taxes? Are you okay with that? And do you want to increase your taxes versus having the money to spend in your pocket and invest in other places? Because you can invest in the public schools. It's just not going to be through their little beautiful penny program that they have. And that's what's beautiful about where we live, is we can choose how we want to invest. Now, there are some people who believes everyone should pay their part to sow into public schools, but there's a reason why they're having to ask for more money, and that's because it's above and beyond what the state is saying, hey, this is what you should be able to function on, make it work, and they're saying we can't. And I'm not saying that it's enough money all the way around, but we've got to figure out what's going on. And I feel like I've got whiplash going on, because when it was presented to me, these golden pennies, these copper pennies were awesome, and it would give us all this money that we don't have to pay for. And what they meant by we don't have to pay for, they meant the school district doesn't have to pay for, but the citizens do. And that's kind of slimy. So I'm hoping they'll change their tune. I'm hoping they'll come across better, because I want to cheer them on, but I don't like supporting slimy tactics. And I just now had that revelation. The we they were talking about was not us or the community. It was the school district. Whew, that's heavy. That's heavy. Okay, last thing I want to show you. Wiley is the same. I was thinking, oh, Wiley. Silly Tammy. I was thinking Wiley didn't change their they didn't really do much with their approved tax rate or the proposed tax rate. Well, it was because their approved tax rate was 1.1499, I think. So they just went as high as they could. So, again, Wiley should be seeing, if you live in Wiley, you should be seeing a decrease in your school district tax. And I think you still will. It's no, you're not going to see that much because, you're going to see a little bit because it's 119 is the no new revenue rate or the NNR. And their proposed, the voter approval rate, tax, which is 1.14. So it is a little decrease, but it should be a lot more. So I know that they have, y'all have approved a bond if you live in the Wiley district. That's another thing. I'm not as familiar with that. They have zero online. If you're not present in the meeting, I don't even know you get a copy of what they talk about because their dissemination of information is very, very limited. And that's surprising to me because they're a 5A school like Abilene is, and Abilene does a much better job of making sure the public is aware of what's going on. So I hope we can fix that. So I hope that's giving you a little picture, a little help to understanding it. I think these hard conversations, the more we talk about them, the more we push through and listen to them, the more we can be ready for the next time we have this conversation. And again, it's already done. We don't have a lot of control except for the Vader for the Abilene School District, but I just want you to know that they're not presenting you the information so that you can make an informed decision. They're presenting you the information so that you'll choose the decision they want you to make. And I don't know about you, but I would like it if people said, hey, here's what it's going to cost you. And I can say, I think it's worth it. Rather than saying, here's what you need to do. And I can say, oh, I got to do this. And then realize, no, I didn't. That makes me feel frustrated. And that's why I am doing more than I can to help educate you so that you can be informed and empowered to make an impact in Abilene. Make sure you share this podcast with your friends and family. Follow me on social media at Just an Average Citizen. In Abilene, I think you can just type in Just an Average Citizen on social Facebook and Instagram. I've also got a YouTube channel, a Rumble channel. You pick your poison, how you want to follow if you're not on social media. I've also got a Twitter, an X account. Sorry, that was really old and outdated. I've got an X account, and I'm just trying to keep you informed so that you can make decisions. And it's so amazing when I walk around the community and people say, oh, I really appreciate what you were saying. I appreciate you trying to help make a difference. You don't have to like everything I do. You don't have to agree with everything, but you cannot deny the fact that we've got to start being more involved and engaged so that we can make a difference. And you can. Your voice matters more than you know. So until next time.